Right, good morning. It's Andre de Villiers here. It's a great pleasure to spend the time with you this morning, making this broadcast about advertising. We're going to be talking about print advertising as well as advertising in the digital media. And before I start, I'd like to just take the opportunity to explain a few things about the broadcast. First of all, you can hear me, but I can't hear you. You can email me questions using the email address Andre, Andre, at SAEA. I'll put that up on the screen here. That's Andre at that domain. You can see the saea.co.za. And I'd also like to suggest that you go at some point to Facebook, and you will see at facebook.com/SA Estate Agents. That's linked to my blog. And if you go there and like it, then you can always find out about more training that I'll be doing. So please do that. If you want to email me, Andre at SAEA. My intention is to make this training available on YouTube. And that will also be published on, the YouTube link will be published on saea.co.za. So please go and have a look at it there later on if you started late or if you unfortunately missed the broadcast this morning. I belong to a franchise brand, and this training is being provided broadly. It's not. This has nothing to do with my franchise brand. I want to just explain why I'm doing that. For some people have already asked me the question. I've been in real estate now for well over 30 years, and one of the great things about being in the real estate business, for me personally, has been the number of people throughout my real estate career who've shared their skills and their knowledge, of course, in terms of the real estate business. And I enjoy training a great deal. And one of the things I decided to do was to record a series of training videos to give back to my industry that I care a great deal about. I have been a member of the Institute of Estate Agents since I started. That's over 30 years. And I really do think that the slogan, "Together we move forward," I think it used to be "Proud to be professional." Both of those are very important to me. Knowledge and skill are two different things, but when it comes to skill, you can go to as many training seminars and watch as many training videos as you want. It's not about what you hear, and it's not about what you know. It's about what you do. And certainly it's my hope that today there will be some ideas that you will give more thought to in terms of the way you do things, because if we do things better as estate agents, we actually, our whole industry rises. And I think that's the secret to me, the motivation really at its essence to sharing information like this. If we are better, we feel better about being professional. The society we work in regards us better, and that's important. Okay, let's start off with, why do we advertise? I mean, a really obvious question, but there are a couple of interesting aspects, I think, to that answer. When we advertise, we are not always trying to achieve one particular objective. It does depend on the circumstances, and it does depend on what it is, where we're advertising, and what the property is that we're advertising. Think of advertising in two ways. There's the wide net advertising and there's the narrow net advertising. In your wide net advertising, what you're really trying to do is to reach as many potential buyers, not just for the one property that you're advertising. You're trying to trawl. It's like fishing. You're trying to trawl out there to get a whole lot of buyers who are in the marketplace. And this would be for more than that property, but for quite a few properties that you have that might be similar. If, for example, you were selling a 2-bedroom flat in Claremont and you had about 5 of them, there's very little point, frankly, in placing 5 different ads for 2-bedroom flats. You might want to create one ad with a more general, more generic flavor to it to catch a whole lot of people to your ad, draw them in so that you could work with them on all of those apartments. So that might be your intention, and the way you would write and structure that ad would be different to a narrow net advertising where you might have a very specific property. To get a whole lot of generic response to it is the last thing you want, and you would need to focus that advertisement very specifically for a type of buyer that you're looking for. So it's good to give a bit of thought about what you're trying to achieve when you start thinking about structuring your ad. But in both cases, what you're trying to achieve more than anything else is to get the information from that buyer so that you can enter into some dialogue with them to get an appointment to go and look at that property or other properties. So the way you're going to respond to your structure of your ad is also must be not about providing all the information about the property to the point that the person actually doesn't need to contact you. You want to structure your ad so that you whet the person's appetite, you make them interested in the property, and they need to contact you to get more information. And nowadays, with the portals particularly requiring the addresses of the property, there's so much information that you have to put out in the public domain that you need to be quite tactful and skillful about how you're going to actually put that information out there if you're trying to get the person to contact you. So the second objective then is that you're trying to get that person's contact information, not just provide them with information, so that they are going to contact you as the source of that extra knowledge that they need, that extra information that they need. And this could also be the difference between them contacting you and contacting someone else, because let's face it, very often the advertisement for a property is being carried for more than one agency. So if it's not your sole mandate, you may very well want to make sure that your ad has something extra to it to draw the person to contact you as opposed to contacting the other agent advertising the property. And then there's a third reason I'd like us to just talk about for a moment before we're carrying on, and that is every advertisement that you place is part of your personal promotion. Every time you advertise, and every time you put a drop out there, a pamphlet or anything, but we're focusing on advertising. Every time you advertise, you are telling the person who's reading that, who may be a buyer but may also be a seller, a bit about your professionalism and your ability to be their choice for marketing their property. So you don't know who's looking at your ad. It could be a buyer, it could be a seller, and you want to make sure your ad reflects on your professionalism. So that is another, maybe an unintentional thing that you need to think about when you actually structure your ad. And certainly I would hope that it makes you realize that you need to make as much effort as possible in actually what you're saying about yourself in your advertisement, by making sure it's a well-crafted advertisement, an effective advertisement that makes people actually say, wow, okay, that's interesting. I like the way that's being done. Right, and moving on, I'm going to start off talking about the written ad for print media. And what I'd also like to do to start off is to say there's a difference between a corporate ad, which the definition of the corporate ad in our general agent speak is an ad for a property that's going to appear on one of your company branded pages. It could be a half page, it could be 8 pages, whatever the case may be, but the pages are branded for your company. So the person who is putting that page together, they're not just looking at your ad, they are looking at the whole page, and in fact the 2 pages that are next to each other, and the whole way the various pages follow. They've got to look at the whole thing together in terms of its impact on the reader, and of course other sellers that may be having a look at the marketplace. So there are lots of role players that are connected to your ad, not just you, not just your manager, not just your seller, not just the buyer. There's a whole lot of people that have got different needs about your ad. So there's a little bit of a difference in terms of how you would structure and how you would have to follow the rules of your company in terms of the corporate ads, as opposed to an A to Z ad, and of course also classified advertising, which I'm actually not going to cover because there's so little classified advertising with real estate that I don't think it warrants the attention. But ads for A to Z are different to your corporate ads. Then I'm going to look a little bit at ads for the property portals like Property 24, Private Property, and your own website. Really, the points that we have to cover wouldn't be different for those different types of digital media. Some of those things that we need to consider would be true for all of them. I am not going to be covering advertising on social media. Not now. But I'm going to do a separate special training seminar on advertising on social media, which is something that I'm really engaged in. I can tell you categorically that I've added 100,000 rands to my business's bottom line profit through what I do with social media. I keep a very close eye on its results, and I'm going to be doing separate training on that. So again, if you want to join me for the training on the social media advertising, how to do it properly, and I've learned a lot about that because I did a lot of it badly, but I certainly have got quite a lot to share with you on that. So again, go to that Facebook page I mentioned, and I'll just pop that back on there to remind you. And for those of you who joined a bit late, if you follow me on that Facebook page, SA Estate Agents, I can keep you informed of the training that I'll do on advertising on social media. Right, back to print media. And let's have a look at the fundamental difference between the advertising that we've got to deal with in terms of these two. They're very different, very, very different. Now with print media, you know that you've got very limited copy. You've probably got one picture, maybe in terms of the corporate page layout, or you'd have maybe a second picture or a third picture, but not usually. By far, the bulk of advertising in print media will be with one picture. That's very restrictive. You can't add video and all those things to it. Obviously, it's very, very difficult. It's very it's totally static. You can put in the contact information, but you can't do anything exciting with it. It's really a very, very limited structure. So we've got to be really careful about how we're actually going to structure that. And I'll come back to that, but let's have a look at the differences. With digital media, we really don't have much limitation at all other than our imagination. There's so much we can do nowadays. Your own website may not be able to do one or two things, but most websites and most of the portals that we use now really have the ability to carry almost endless copy. Multiple pictures, video, you can have floor plans and virtual tours, and you can also, in terms of inviting a person to respond, do so in many ways. They can talk to you on live chat, which I have active on one of my sites. And actually, just to digress for a moment, I mean, I was on my farm in Brazil, and I actually had a message that came through about one of the properties, and I was able on live chat to interact with that person right away as if I was the agent. Actually, I wasn't, because I'm not involved in directly selling. But I was able to communicate with that person immediately, and I mean, they were really impressed with that immediate interaction. And they would never, ever have thought that, yeah, this person is sitting in a mountain in the middle of South America. You know, it's extraordinary. But that's the exciting things we can do with our ads in digital media. But there are other things also in terms of the contact, and besides things like live chat. Of course, they can click to email, they can click to SMS, they can share with a friend. All of these facilities are there, and they can also publish to social media. Very often there's a share button that will allow them to share to Facebook or whatever. So a world of difference between what we can do and what we have to work with in terms of print media and digital media in terms of creating our ad. Bottom line is we need to think strategically when we create it. Right, back to the heart and nitty-gritty of print media. I like to say it's my easy ABC formula. The first thing that we're going to do when we are writing a print media ad, whether it's an A to Z, whether it's a corporate page ad, we've got to get the person's attention. The print media ad, if you just think about it, it does not appear by itself. It's either part of a whole lot of corporate pages where the areas are all jumbled up, which is not very buyer-friendly. Or it is part of an A to Z, which is more buyer-friendly in terms of the areas, but even more limiting how you can actually highlight the property. So we've got to, as I say, A is for attention. We have got to make sure that if people are looking at ads, we remember that what they're trying to do is they're not trying to look at everything. I mean, nobody's got the time to go and look at everything. What they're trying to do is to narrow it down. They are trying to go through a selection process whereby they're going to say, right, I'm going to go and look at these 5 properties, or I'm going to make phone calls about these 8 properties. So there's an incredible selection process that has to be made. And we need to be very aware of that when we're actually creating our advertisement. And the most important part of being aware of that is getting a person's attention. Now, we don't want to attract the attention of the wrong buyer. That's a waste of time. So we need to make sure that we catch the attention of the right type of buyer. Sometimes I'll read an ad like, starting up or slowing down as a heading. And then there'll be the rest of the copy about the property. And, the heading is your attention grabber together with the photograph. The photograph and the heading needs to be incredibly well considered. They need to go together to be effective. If you've got a photograph of a family home with the pool and the entertainment area, etc., and your heading is talking to someone looking for a bachelor lifestyle, you have obvious conflict. There was just an obvious example of an inconsistency with the picture. And remember, a picture says 1,000 words. So you've got the picture, you've got the heading. That is what you're relying on for the person to select your property in this elimination process. The more, though, the heading and the picture go together and make sense, the more chance you've got of getting that person's attention, the right type of person's attention, and getting them to read further. There's no good crafting this fantastic ad when you're not actually getting the right person's attention. So this starting up and slowing down, now that's a bad idea. And you see a lot of these sort of mixed messages. When you structure your advertisement, you must think of the advertisements that you're going to be placing for the property. And sometimes a property would be very suitable for either that type of buyer or for that type of buyer. But don't try and do that in the same advertisement. This week, if you're going to be organizing your advertising for that house, then focus it on that particular type of buyer and their lifestyle scenario. Think about who you want to go for. Think about who you're targeting, and make sure that the whole heading photograph is aimed at that type of buyer. Next week, try something different. Use a different picture, a different heading, and go for a different type of buyer. And so don't just think about your ad in a one-off sense. Think of it in terms of the time you've got and the marketing plan that you are busy unfolding, in terms of creating something that has actually got, in terms of what you're trying to achieve. Okay, then let's look at, I like to look at the copy of the advertisement in terms of a little formula called hoodoo. Now, Hoodoo applies to the advertisement as a whole. Hoodoo is, who are you trying to reach with your advertisement? You know, this applies to all advertising. Who are you trying to reach? And the clearer you can picture that person, that family, that target market, the better. And then what do you want them to do? Not as in phone me, but what do you want them to do with the product that you're marketing? In this case, the property, that individual property that you're marketing. What do you want them to do with it? And that's the secret to actually creating an engaging ad that actually makes sense to someone and gets them to respond, gets them to actually connect to it. So the relationship between the picture and the heading we've covered. And by the way, John Caples, who was one of the head of one of the leading, I think it's called Phoenix Mutual, it's one of the biggest advertising agencies in America. He actually said, if you've got whatever amount of time you've got to write your ad, to create your ad, he would spend 70% of the time working out the heading and its relationship to the image that they were using. Of course, our image is going to be the house, maybe the poolside area, maybe the tennis court, whatever. The relationship between the heading and the picture, 70% of the time. The other 30% of the time he would use to the copy, the general copy that's going to be in the ad. So that's an interesting allocation of time. It sort of shows what the resources are. Okay, so let's have a look at the copy. That's I said, who do? What do you want people to do with it? When we say, what do we want people to do with it? We want to say to them, what is it that we want them to feel about their engagement with that property? What is it going to solve in their life? Because people are looking to solve lifestyle issues. They're not just looking for a roof over their head. They're looking for something that goes with their preconceived ideas about their home and their lifestyle and their family and what they enjoy doing. So the way you do that is you look at the relationship between features and benefits. For example, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, double garage, pool area. These are features, and people don't buy them. Buying features is a consequence of a person's view of themselves. We could all live in different types of accommodation to what we actually have, but the more we can afford, the more greater the idea that we have about the type of home we want to live in, the more we're looking at the benefits that we will experience in terms of the features that we are going to get in the process. A very good example to make it quite clear what I'm talking about here is if you had to talk about a family home and you mentioned as a feature the house has got a nice lawn area, a large lawn area. That's a very factual thing. It's got a large lawn. If in your copy you attach a benefit to that feature, a large lawn to play cricket with the kids, what you do is you create a picture. You allow the person reading your ad to actually see, feel emotionally. It tugs at the love of family. So you connect an emotion by connecting a benefit that the person will experience with the feature. And that creates a winning ad. And that's the focus of your copy. So that's the B, the benefits of that you're selling in the who do. Who you're targeting at, what you want them to do with it. The do, play cricket with the kids. And then the C part of it is quite simply the contact information or the call to action. Everyone will tell you that there's no good writing an advertisement unless you've got a call to action. A call to action is not just the phone number and the email. The call to action needs to be something that is engaging. Here again, I mentioned, you might be placing an ad, but you're not the sole agent, and so there might be another ad that's there as well. Your call to action that could be very effective is about something that you've got that you're not putting in the ad that you want to tell them about. That's an effective call to action, and of course, you then put your phone number in, your email, or whatever the case may be. Very important that you try and make your call to action just a little bit more interesting than call me now. You can find various ways to actually get the person to want to respond urgently, to get the right person to respond. But one of the ways is you might have some specific additional information that you want to share with them. You could also be organizing a private show house, a private open house, as opposed to a general, on show on Sunday. Could be calling for a private invitation viewing on Wednesday or midweek and get the details from me. Something that will stimulate response. Okay, I'm going to now cover a couple of do's and don'ts. When you're writing an advertisement in the print media, it's very different. So the do's and the don'ts for print media, some would apply to both, but some certainly would apply to print media. One of the things would be précis. You need to be far more to the point, far more factual, far more aware of every additional word you use that's not necessary. That's not the case for digital media, but it's absolutely the case because you have got limited area in print media to work with. So you really want to make sure that once you've structured your ad, you start to whittle it down without losing the impact to make sure that it's shorter and got more punch to it. Ask others to read your ad. I gave as an example the play cricket with the kids on the lawn, that benefit attached to the feature. When you ask someone else to read your ad, ask them to simply describe the picture that you're building in their mind. If the picture they're building is similar to the house that you're selling, then you know you're doing a good job of it. If they're getting a totally different picture, you might want to restructure your ad. Okay, ask the seller why they bought it and what they have liked the most about it. It's a very interesting thing. When you talk to the seller about, in this type of way, why did you buy the house? And in living here, what is it that you've liked the most? They are going to give you information that very often can be the heart and soul of your ad. They may come up with all sorts of things that you're completely and utterly unaware of because you're just seeing the property, obviously, on a couple of appointments. And at the time that you've got to write the ad, you may have only seen the house once. You certainly haven't experienced living there. A seller will also appreciate you asking those types of questions. So do that. It's a good idea indeed. Some don'ts. Avoid the superlatives. There's a whole lot of commonly used words in the English language which just mean nothing to anybody. The words, the superlatives like lovely and fabulous and stunning and stylish and super and, they mean nothing. The way to avoid a superlative is very easy. If you've used one in your ad, because you always start off by writing quickly and just get your stuff out there on the paper or on the screen. But if you've used a word like stunning, ask yourself, why is it stunning? And in answering that question, you'll avoid the superlatives. Okay, so don't use superlatives. Don't repeat pictures. We're a long way away from those days of taking 35mm film and having it developed. We all know we can, I've been doing real estate a long time, but if you can go and take as many photographs as you like. If you've got a photographer going, fantastic. And the photographer will be giving you a good choice. If you're not a photographer and you're the one taking the photographs, go take a whole load of them. Follow some basic rules with photography, which I can't cover now. But select the best and use them in rotation. Now, print media, you can't use more than 1 or 2 pictures. Change them, just like you want to change your heading. Don't repeat ads. It's a really bad idea. It gives the seller the wrong message. I think it just says lazy, or uncreative. So change the picture, change the heading, keep the relationship there, but don't. And another don't is don't write ads at the last minute. You really want to write an ad when you have got the ability to digest it and think about it. There's a good place to write an ad is at the house. If you do have the opportunity to sit on the patio and write down some ad notes, you don't have to write the entire thing, but to write some advertising notes. You're going to pick up on a couple of things at that property that you just won't remember back in the office when you've got 10 minutes left and I've got to get the ads in. Don't write under pressure. Do it at the right time. Do it in an environment that will stimulate you. Something that's worked incredibly well for me, sometimes you have to write an advertisement and the creative juices just are not flowing. If you keep yourself a nice pile of garden and home type magazines, it's not that you're going to be looking for the right heading or if you just start to read good professional copy on lovely homes, it just engages your brain and you just it sort of switches a few things on. And after paging through a couple of magazines for a couple of minutes, you'll find you are just more in tune with writing copy that's going to be effective. So try that. And I honestly can't read on that last point, but I've covered the important things. Okay, some ideas that you will not see very often, and if some of these are a bit, oh no, I don't think I'm going to do that, it doesn't matter. Maybe it'll get you to think about some other ideas. And here's the first one. We are, most of the time, selling properties to people who want to live in them, not investors. Most of the time, we are actually selling a property to someone who is maybe going to have a family, they're going to live in it. But when you page through, and remember, people are selecting properties, you want to catch their attention. When we page through all these ads, they are all lifeless. There's nobody living in them. There are no dogs playing. There are no children laughing. There's nothing. They're just, maybe there's a vase of flowers, and that's the surest sign of some life, but they're dead. An idea. If the seller of the property has got some pets, nice looking dog like my golden retrievers, or they've got young children, put them into the pictures. Okay, you need their permission. That's a given, but put some life, put some people living in the place into your pictures. Just try it. It actually can create an ad that will stand out a lot more and work quite well for getting a person's attention. Another thing with pictures that I wanted to suggest as an idea is to be aware of the shape of the advertisement in terms of its restriction on the photograph, and provide some pictures that you crop, because cropping really puts the focus onto a property. Just a little bit of cropping can just move the focus and the attention onto whatever it is you want the person to look at. So you can cut out a couple of things in the cropping that detract from the photograph, and that's really important. When you're working with more than one photograph, you've got the choice of being able to put in a number. Obviously, this would apply more on the digital media. Don't forget to take photographs of smaller features. Things like the fish pond, things like maybe a fancy door knocker, a fireplace, a good example. So don't take, not the stuff that's going to be taken away when the person moves. That's a bit pointless. But focus in on some of the smaller issues that reflect the quality or the interesting aspects of the property themselves. I think this is something that is missing in a lot of ads. Also, when you write, another idea, when you're writing your copy, if you can slip in, it's a bit like name dropping, if you can slip in things like the AEG or the SMEG, if you use brands that have already spent millions and millions and millions on establishing themselves as meaning quality, as meaning something, slip it into your copy. It's a good way to communicate a whole lot of ideas people have about the property, their perceptions about it. So using brands is a good idea. You could even allude to a brand. For example, your Ferrari will look very at home in this driveway. That would be very different to saying your Bentley would be at home in this driveway. Can you just see how using a brand, you're talking about a car in a driveway that doesn't exist. But by using a Ferrari in a driveway or the Bentley in a driveway, a whole different story about what you're trying to say about that property. I generally advise you against trying to be funny, against humor. It can be a bit risky. And also, if you're going to do something a little bit unusual, you really need to get the seller on board with the idea. If you're doing something a little bit unusual, you might want to make sure the seller knows about it. So if they see it, they are prepared. I remember placing an advertisement. It was a house in Gardens that I was marketing, and it was really a weird little property. Like Gardens is full of weird properties and weird people. But I had the picture of this old woman who looked like a witch. Actually, she was a witch. It was like a Halloween picture. Not in those days, it was clip art. So you had to cut out and send through to and the heading was "Keep it under your hat." So it was a picture of a witch and this "Keep it under your hat," and the ad worked incredibly well, and I got a lot of weird people responding and sold the house very quickly. And it worked well. But I think that ad, if the seller had just seen it and wasn't prepared, might have actually thought, "Good Lord, what do you think of my house?" So you need to get a person on board. And yes, I've already covered the issue about the mixed messages. Be careful of doing that, like the starting up and slowing down. Mixed messages don't work. Right, let's have a look at digital advertising now, just to round this off. As I said, I'm not going to cover advertising on social media now, but I definitely will do it as a separate training course entirely. So we'll do that for a separate half hour or whatever. But looking at digital ads, we know we've got plenty of space. We know we can use multiple pics, and we know we can use video and floor plans and virtual tours and all of those things. I think what you need to be aware of, and I'm afraid to say it's my opinion that a lot of managers are not actually aware, as they should be, of the rules of the portals. Now, there are two portals that you really have to worry about. Of course, there are lots of them, but Private Property and Property 24. Sorry, not in that. Property 24 is definitely the biggest portal, and Private Property would be second or third. Gumtree, interestingly enough, is now the second, would be regarded as the second biggest portal in terms of people responding to properties being advertised. You need to be aware of the rules that are being applied by the portals. And there are various things that I know here that I would say are some tricks of the trade. And I, frankly, don't want to detail those because they do give me a specific advantage. But I will say, in fairness, find out what are the things that are going to result in your property being featured better in terms of the rankings on the portals. It's really critical, because unlike the newspaper where people select through paging, if you're advertising a property in an area where there are a lot of properties for sale, I don't even know of an area that might apply to at the moment. We're so short of stock, but it's a good thing to be aware of it. You're not dealing as with the newspaper where properties are all over the show. With a portal, you're dealing with properties that are at the top or at the bottom. And psychologically, It's been absolutely proven. It's not just about people being more likely to see your ad if it's at the top, which of course is true. There's something far more important than that. People actually regard properties that are at the top of the list as being more interesting, newer, more credible, more interesting, more exciting, or whatever the case. There's a whole different association with properties that are at the top of the list as opposed to properties that are at the bottom. So you really do want to know some of the tricks of the trade. I will share some things that are on all portals, and I think relate to providing a quality service as estate agents. The one is you really have to have about 15 images for the portals to actually see your listing as being worth featuring. Of course, we're not talking about featuring because of a paid position. I'm talking about a natural rise to the top. Certainly at least 12. This is not that important on Gumtree, by the way. The address of the property. If you're not putting the actual address of the property in for strategic reasons, that's your decision. But the portals will penalize your listing very definitely if you haven't got your address showing and if your mapping is not accurate. So that's two things you really want to make sure you're focusing on. And then a last point I'm going to cover, which I suppose really could, there's a danger that because you can put a lot of pictures on, people tend to be a little bit less fussy and decide to chuck in images that just shouldn't be included. So on the one hand, yes, you want to have 15 images or at least 12 images. On the other hand, don't just fluff it up with a whole lot of images that actually work against you. A picture does say 1,000 words. You really want to worry about every image you use. And two last points. Get yourself a bit of software. There's so many of them available for low price. You don't have to spend a lot of money on something like Photoshop. Get yourself a bit of software and learn how to use it properly. Something like Photo Editor. There's loads of them. Just Google, you'll find. I'll put a couple of ideas on my blog, SAEA.co.za, under software. I will still do it. I haven't done it yet. But there are quite a few really nice software packages. There's one called Smart Photo Editor, oneword.com. It's $29. I use that. It's very easy to use, and it just takes your image and gives you a whole lot of options, and you can just click which one you want, besides having to lighten and brighten, etc. But it's really important to enhance the images that you've taken. A picture says 1,000 words. You just have to remember that all the time. You want to make sure your images pop, and it's so easy. And to not do it. And you know what, we're all blessed with wonderful people at the office who really do care about what you're doing, but they're busy. It's better that you put a bit of extra effort into your images that you then send into the office and help do it. And really the last thing is, when you've written an ad, when you've put together your digital ad, for heaven's sake, proof it. Make sure that you're cooperating with the person at the office who is doing this job, and have a look at it afterwards, the finished job, and be honest with yourself. Does this advertisement, whether it's online, whether it's a digital, or whether it's a print ad, does it convey a consistent message? Does the information you provide and the image and the heading, does it all belong together? Is there a story? Is there an introduction that's then backed up with content that features and benefits. And does it flow together? You know, think of your ad in its totality. That will make a vast difference. All right, well, that's it. It's 10:15. This has gone reasonably quickly. We're at 45 minutes. Thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning. I've got a whole lot of other courses I'm going to do. They're all going to be about 3/4 of an hour to an hour. If you did find this useful, please go to my Facebook, not my Facebook page, but the facebook.com/SA Estate Agents. I'll just put that up on the screen there for you. That's my blog, my real estate blog, saea.co.za. And then my Facebook page for that is facebook.com/SA Estate Agents. Pop yourself or pop me an email if you prefer, andre@saea.co.za, and then I can also add you to my subscriber list so I can tell you about other training that we've got coming up. So thanks very much indeed. This video will be available on SAEA for you to watch and share. And if those of you have had some problem with the image being rather jerky, I've got a little monitoring screen up here and I can see that it has been a little bit at times. It will also depend on your internet connection. Then the video replay usually is quite a lot better. Thanks very much. See you around and enjoy professionalism. So I can tell you about other training that we've got coming up. So thanks very much indeed. This video will be available on SAEA for you to watch and share. And if those of you have had some problem with the image being rather jerky, I've got a little monitoring screen up here and I can see that it has been a little bit at times. It will also depend on your internet connection. Then the video replay usually is quite a lot better. Thanks very much. See you around and enjoy professionalism.